Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this RPG review I'm going to be looking at Mytharog version 2.0, written by Varg Vikernes. It's a mythic fantasy RPG, and version 2 of the book is a lot more slimline than the original. This comes in at about 122 pages, as opposed to the original version 1.5, which clocked in at about 250 odd pages. Now, I was sent a copy of the original game by the author. I enjoyed it greatly and recorded a review of it, which you can see by clicking on the link there. When the author decided to attempt to make a more streamlined / introductory version of the game, I was lucky enough to be sent a copy again. Now, because I've already reviewed the mainstay of the setting and gone through all the contents in my original video, I'm going to depart from my normal method of reviewing. I'm not going to go through the contents, breaking them down chapter by chapter, since the contents, certainly the background of Thule, is broadly the same as that in the original version of Mytharog. If you want to know more about that, you can just click on the link there. So if you do, go ahead. I'll wait for you for a moment. Okay, back with me? Great. Now, I'm mainly going in this review to look at what differentiates this version, version 2, from version 1.5, the original version that I was sent. Now, the most obvious difference is that the book drops the papyrus font that was used almost exclusively in the original. Now, I think this is probably a good idea, since it certainly makes the text easier to read. As with the original, version 2 lacks an index, but this isn't too much of a problem since the contents page is fairly comprehensive. I also like the fact that a common list of abbreviations has been appended to the end of the contents page, giving you an easy reference for many of the terms used extensively throughout the book. The base mechanics are unchanged from the original, with the GM setting a degree of difficulty, or a DD number. The player rolls 3d6, adds their skill level, various modifiers, etc., and attempts to beat the DD number. It's easy to see that the author is a fan of old school style games. Indeed, the Middle-earth role-playing game MERP is mentioned in the list of inspirations on the cover page. Despite the rules being streamlined somewhat, the book is still fairly table heavy, with most pages having at least one table on them, covering everything from racial modifiers to spell effects. The book gives a very brief introduction to the world of Thule in a few paragraphs, and then it launches straight into the mainstay of the rules, starting with character creation, covering the various races present in the campaign world. Although I must say that without the background information found in version 1.5, the races didn't feel as vibrant and three-dimensional to me personally. The world of Thule is very much the same Nordic mythology-inspired fantasy realm as originally found in version 1.5. But I think, probably due to the space constraints of version 2, the setting is painted in much broader strokes. It's hinted at in grey box outs and snippets spread throughout the book, rather than having a big dedicated world chapter as with the original version of the game. Although there is a bestiary chapter and another covering Thulean deities, which are quite interesting to read. The rules are workable enough, and there'll be a lot in this book, skill ranks, modifiers, etc., that will be familiar to anyone who has played any of the various iterations of D&D or other OSR releases. But I think one of the issues with the book for me is that in order to fit everything into half the page count, a lot of the setting flavour appears to have been trimmed out so that the majority of the rules can still be crammed in. Now, this creates a few issues in my opinion. Number one, the book feels a little crammed, with each page having multiple tables and box outs competing for attention with the main text. Two, what setting information there is spread throughout the entire book, rather than being concentrated in a single chapter. Whilst this makes for a very entertaining read and it helps break up the main body of the rules, I can see it being a little slower to reference things during a game, at least until the GM, or the Mythmaster as the game calls it, becomes familiar with the setting. And finally, 3, for me the main appeal of the original was the rich vein of mythology that the background and setting tapped into, much of which appears to be missing or only vaguely covered in version 2. According to the front page of the book, Mytharog was originally made as an educational tool for homeschooling. That's no bad thing. I think anyone would agree using RPGs to teach is a laudable aim. The origins of the book are fairly obvious in version 2, as it has many elements, in my opinion, in common with a school textbook. The majority of the book is text with very little in the way of illustration. There are a lot of tables and boxed out information. The info in the book is presented in a really clear and easy to understand fashion. However, there are large sections where the writing felt a little dry. And there are a few pages where the font becomes quite small and, in my opinion, difficult to read, necessitating a fair amount of squinting. This is obviously so more information can be crammed into the limited page count. The few pages dedicated to the land of Thule give a tantalising glimpse of the Nordic-inspired mythic realm, more lovingly detailed in version 1.5, but those pages do a good job at providing the essential information that the GM would need in order to run a campaign in the setting, although I think that more improvisation or home expansion would be necessary using this version of the game than with version 1.5. The section on the major holidays and festivals of the campaign is very interesting and leads on to an appendix that details some of the real-world inspiration for places and people of Thule. Given the sparser setting information in version 2, I think this is more vital than ever, so it was nice to see that was kept in. I was glad to see that the beautiful map of the campaign world was the same as in the original. And I'll get that map out so you can have a quick look at it here. There we go, if I can get it the right way up. There we are. It's a stunning piece of cartography showing a broken archipelago packed with varying terrain and tantalising place names. So, to conclude this mini review of Mytharog version 2, which is lovingly decorated with a stunning piece of art, again as with version 1.5, which you can see here, it shows a warrior wrestling with a large draconic creature, and although the artwork on each version is very different, I like the fact that they've stuck to this theme. But to conclude, I'm a little bit conflicted about Mytharog version 2. As you can see, if you watch my original review, I absolutely loved version 1.5, and I really felt it had the feel of the myths that inspired it. Now, I went into version 2 hoping to find a version of the game that streamlined the rules a lot and portrayed the setting in large colour 3D, as it were. And the book didn't really take that approach. It chose to mostly focus on the rules, with the setting info confined to a few pages and various little box outs throughout the book. The rules have been streamlined a little, with some of the more detailed tables from the original being trimmed down a good deal to accommodate the reduction in pages. So, do I think you could run a great Mytharog game with version 2? Yes, I most definitely do. I think the rules work fine, and there's enough background information for a good GM to pick up the setting and run with it. However, if I personally were going to be exploring the land of Thule, I'd probably want a copy of both 1.5 for the more detailed background and version 2 for the streamlined rules. So, in conclusion, if you're looking for a skill-based rule system with the bare bones of a campaign world, and you're prepared to either purchase version 1.5 as well, or put in the work fleshing out the world yourself, then Mytharog version 2 could be the game for you. Personally, I would have liked to have seen version 2 take a different tack, trimming the rules down a little more and including a little bit more of that background information. But I still think it's a reasonable game, and one that any fan of OSR games could quite easily run a campaign in. So there you go, that's my mini review of Mytharog version 2. I hope you've enjoyed this video. You'll give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down, and I hope that you'll consider clicking on the red dice up there to subscribe to my channel. Until I see you next time, take care and happy gaming.